So team, welcome to the new QTP training live webinar sessions. This is the Feb 22nd batch, day 1. Thank you for joining and hope you all can hear me well. Just a quick few notes before we get started with the actual session that we're using GoToTraining. As the sessions continue, you have questions, you should post it in the chat instead of raising the hand, because there are over 90 participants in this current batch who are attending this live webinar. So typically most of the questions would be common. So as I come to a logical halt as the session progresses, I will be taking up some of your questions there. Most of your questions will come as part of your practice, because that's what is going to make you perfect. And at that time, you need to use the Google group, which is the private user community for all the training participants for the QTP eLearn. And you could already see an answer for that, your question there. You could search for it, or you could post a new question to get your technical help desk support. So team, primarily the focus of this entire training is how do you master one of the most famous HP automation product called Quick Test Professional. It is by far the most popular test automation tool in the market. While there are other leaders coming in, this has become kind of a base for you to learn your automation career. You could be someone who's very brand new into the IT industry, someone who's moving from a different field in the IT industry into testing, or someone who's been already working in manual testing and looking to progress into the automation. It is one course fits all. Primarily, the whole purpose of this live webinars is to give you a very quick overview, take about 2 to 4 different types of projects and see how we approach them in a very real life kind of a project. How do we do it at a work environment, what you need to master and so on. As part of the whole program, so team, sorry, looking at a quick thing on the chat, is my audio good for everyone? Is it loud enough? All right, for anyone it is not, you should look at the audio settings at your end, make sure you can hear me fine, because the most large portion of the audience is able to hear me good. All right, so what I'm saying is the major portion of the program will come as the recorded videos. Please do note that the whole idea of this program is that you will go through a lot of recorded sessions together. There are a huge catalog of videos that you need to watch. If you want a quick overview of how the webinar is happening, visit qtpelearn.com. You can sign up for these free videos here. You will get the demo videos and the overview video of the whole program out here. Do watch that video. You will also find it out here, 12-minute video on QTP training overview, to get a good detail. So I'm not going into the depth of the training in this program right now. The intent of the first 3 days is to set you on par with the most foundation level basic important areas of VB scripting, frameworks, object-oriented programming, and so on. Once we cover these concepts, then we will go into more complex things. All right. So if you notice, there are only 3 webinars scheduled as part of this current GoToTraining link that is sent to you. That is just to cover the demo sessions for some of you who are still evaluating to join this program. For all the confirmed participants, I'll be sharing a new link or extending the same link for the next 13 odd sessions, so that in total we have at least 15 live webinars. But the whole QTP content itself cannot get covered in 15 live webinars. It will take more time for it. So there are a lot of videos that will be supported along with these live webinars, which we will walk through at length. All right, team. So we'll not focus too much on about the training, what is covered, and so on. We will go straight into analyzing the tool, straight into identifying how do we start to work. So I try and take new applications as much as I can every time, and the application that I found could be interesting for this session is this. There is this website called the Salary Calculator. It's a very simple application. What it does is that this application, just giving you a functional overview of an application that we're taking an example to learn some of the important areas. Okay. This application, when a user comes in and let's say fills in some kind of a salary details, let's say you're taking home a salary of about $100,000. We're not talking about any overtime in here, and we set, let's say, a marital status, and let's say we put in a number of dependents out here, and say about $750 a year monthly deductions for your social security, medical, and other tax liabilities there. Once the user fills up the fields and clicks on go, you will see what are the detailed take-home outputs for that specific set of inputs coming out here. Now, the reason that I've showed this application is this is an application that we will use as a base to develop a very detailed data-driven test automation framework. What that framework is, we will come to it later at length, but let's understand the need for it. If you have a similar application at work where you're trying to test to see if the application works correctly from a functional standpoint. What is the functionality? How is it supposed to work for this application? A user comes in and fills up information. Is he or she able to see the right results coming out here for take home? So if we enter information, are we seeing the details in terms of what is this information that is here, and is this correct or not? That is the test. So typically manual testing is all about, number one, writing the documentation for these steps and performing the steps for a given set of data and verifying to see if this is correct or not, right? So to help in this process of manual testing, let's talk about manual testing first and then we'll get into QTP automation. Let's take an Excel sheet and then start to fill some information. I don't know why my Office product went berserk. I tried to put in my purchase codes and everything as part of it, my product key, but it's still not showing up. So I'll get this fixed later. So don't be alarmed with this product activation failed. Just have to set in the right key for that. So what I'm saying is, let's say we are entering some set of data. So I'm saying $100,000 and the marital status out here is that the individual is married, one dependent, and let's say about $750 a month is the deduction that is happening on the paychecks. Now, for each set of this data, the application is giving an output. So I can take this output and start to publish it in this Excel. What is this Excel doing? This Excel is simply taking information from the user, and we are able to take the information back from the application and put it into that Excel. Now we will have to actually do the calculation, which I don't have a formula right now. We will come to that formula thing later. We want to see if this is correct or not. So a given set of data, when a user is inputting the information, is this information that has come out correct or not? If it is correct, then I would say that this has, let's put this as the result, not time taken. Let's delete it for now. I will say that this is a pass, or if it is an incorrect thing, I will say it is a fail. Now, if we take one set of data and for this combination, this works good and it's a pass, can I say the application is working correctly? Yes, but I can only say that it is working correctly for that given set of data. If I need to try new sets of data and see how the application is behaving, the data keeps changing and I have to make sure that the application is giving results for different sets of changing data. That is the intent. The testing is all about trying to ensure that the application is not failing for different sets of data or different possible combinations of user inputs. The user in this case is only inputting data. So the results which are coming cannot be just verified for one set of data. It has to be verified for different sets of data. Okay. How does the application behave depending on what kind of a data we put in here? Now, what is the issue if I'm doing this manually? The issue if I'm doing it manually is nothing big. Number one is that we have to take each set of data, put it into the application, get the output from the application, put it back into the Excel, calculate the results, compare it and say it's a pass or a fail. So what do you typically see as a challenge? Number one, lot of time consumption. it is not efficient. We may take 1 minute for each set of data, approximately, let's say. So if I have 100 sets of data, then we're talking about close to an hour and a half. So that's a lot of time to test. But this becomes even more laborious process when anything changes in this application. We have to go back and redo this entire sets of 100 records. Then we are repeating the same lengthy process time over time. So we are not really taking the benefits of seeing how we could automate such a process. That is number one. So efficiency is lost. The second thing is that you are taking information. So I've taken, let's say, 110,000. So if I go to the website and start to put in 110,000 out here, all right, and do the calculation, I will get different results. But why is this result so low right now? Because I missed a 0. When I do things manually, there are high chances that we can make manual errors. So it is not necessarily accurate. There is high chance, especially when you work with hundreds of sets of records. The third thing is, which I had actually mentioned a few minutes back, is that we have to repeat the same process whenever the application goes through changes, and those are primarily your software releases. Each time, like your iPhone, they come up with different versions, your cars come up with different models, your websites keep getting upgraded, Facebook comes up with different new features into it. All of these are additions or changes to things as is today. So tomorrow it's going to be different. Whenever things change, we have to go back and test things, and that's primarily what your regression testing is all about. So there is a lot of loss in terms of efficiency, reusability, and accuracy. If I can find a tool that handles these three areas primarily, then we are able to do successful test automation. All right. So automation testing is all about one part called automation, the second part called testing. Okay. Automation is all about how do we teach a system or a tool to understand the instructions, perform them, get us the results so that we are able to achieve the efficiency, the reusability, and the accuracy. All right. And testing then is just one simple addition over the automation. The core focus of this entire program is around automation. Testing, the reports and all that is a simple addition at the end that we can do very easily. All right. So that's the base. Now to execute this, now that we have seen certain set of data that we will use to test the application, which we call it as test data, let's look at a simple plan. The plan out here is very simple. I said here's the application, the functionality is what is the take-home pay calculator, and what kind of a browser are we testing this on. The steps out here that you see are, if a manual user comes in and tries to perform this, what are the steps he or she would do? Okay, open the browser, go to the application, enter the values, process the pay calculator, capture the results from the application, compare it, and see if it's pass or fail, and close the browser. All right. When we automate it, we have to teach the tool to identify and perform the same steps. So how will we work with HP Quick Test Professional to achieve this? The usual typical way that most of us start with is the record and run. What is record and run? Now let's actually get into QTP itself. So I'm actually starting to work with QTP 11 team. That way, we have a 30 days license, which we could use for a trial, for our learning purpose. So now, as part of the QTP tool, you will see this tool is very simple and complex at the same time. Anything that you see for the first time can be complicated. As you tend to use it, it becomes simple. But you got to know exactly in a structured manner where to start, how to go, and so on. The first place that you will focus on, team, is that there is a complete set of menu items out here. Lot of features built into this tool. Are these important? Yes. Some of them we can discard, we don't need to use, but the prime focus is going to be around the VB scripting, which is the programming language, which we'll get to shortly. We will cover most of the important aspects that we use in a very practical environment, the job environment. All you need to do is go about practicing as I show on the applications that I show, or any applications that you have access to, and that's about it for you to master this. You don't need to do anything beyond it to at least get into your first projects or get into a new job and so on. The menu bars, all the features we will come to slowly, but the first starting point is to go to something called as the test. As soon as we go to test, you will see the view changing. And here is where we will focus most part of our entire training on. We will not touch keyword view because it's useless. Even if you say that you don't know keyword view, that's fine. Why? Okay, very important tip. Just remember this. QTP has been built for manual test engineers to be able to run automation tests. And that's where a lot of features have been built in such a way that it makes things easy for someone who's got absolutely no coding knowledge to be able to do automation. However, for the real automation in the real jobs, we need to do coding. That is a must. So some of these features have been built assuming that you do not like to code. You do not like to write functions or VB scripting and so on. But you and I will not do that. We will focus on coding because that is what is needed. A lot of other things like the checkpoints, some of the actions and so on are also very similar. A lot of people continue to use it. Do not worry. Okay. So the first feature that I wanted to show as part of QTP is this record. When you record on any application, let's say we close this browser. When I record, the first thing that comes up is what is the URL for the application, which I can collect from here and put it out here. And which browser are we going to associate it with, and how do we start to run it. Just select these options, say apply, and say OK. Once you do that, as soon as the recording process starts, QTP is now in a learning mode. It is learning what we do on this application. It has automatically taken us here, and as we perform different steps, for example, I enter some information here, you will see different sets of code getting generated. Okay, so as I continue to enter information, you will see that QTP is learning each of the steps. What is it that we're performing on the application? How is it going to learn it so that in future it can try and do the same stuff? Okay, and we've put like something like $850 out here. Finally, what we did is we clicked on the go button. These 5-6 steps that we performed is now giving us the result. And QTP has learned the execution of these steps at least to input data. Now, if I stop the test, what QTP has done is it has learned the ways to, Okay, this is a general crash that typically happens with any software application, so nothing to be alarmed about, but I'm just trying to make sure that we know what it is happening. Okay, so I'm going to close this program and restart it. Sometimes, just like any other application, it can crash, and what it will do is it would have lost the data, all that we did. So I'm going to start the same process again, not a big thing. Okay, just to let you know, team, we will not focus for too long on this record, just to show you that there is a feature like this. Okay, that's about it. We will get directly into the execution using objects, repositories, and so on. All right, done. So now I'm going to click on stop again, and there you go. This is interesting. Is it a bug or is it something to do with the record and run? Not sure. If I click on debug, it will open up the entire coding. Very interesting. In fact, even if it continues to happen for record and run, I'm okay as long as we are able to do our own coding behind it, because we're going to move away from record and run either way. So, okay, what you saw, if you remember, is about 4 or 5 lines getting generated here, right? Now, the next step that I wanted to show as part of that was to save this test and run. When I make a run, you will see that the entire test gets executed on the application exactly the way it recorded. The way it understood, it is going to perform the same things. This is typically how the record and run works. So team, I'm not sure why this crash has happened. It could be related to settings on my system, or a defect in general on the application, or anything to do with my IE. I'm not going to deviate into that part and try and resolve it, but what I'm trying to do now is show you how we want to do it practically in a project environment. So this is what I mentioned we do, but now what we will do is in a different approach altogether. Do you see this DDF plan? That is where we will focus on. This is the data-driven framework plan. How do we go about creating a detailed data-driven framework? And here are the steps for it. This is what we're going to do for the next 4 or 5 days, team, as part of the first project. Once we complete the first project, then we will get into another project and we will develop a keyword-driven framework using a different application altogether. So what are the steps at a high level that we have customized right now that we will try and approach is are here. The first thing is we will prepare our test plan, scenario, and test data, which most part of it we have done already. We have got some sample set of data. We've got an overall test plan, and we know that what is the test scenario. Test scenario is what are we trying to test out here. So I'm going to put status for each task completed out here. So I'm going to put this to about 50%. Why 50%? Because we may go back and add more sets of data to re-evaluate. We may change the flow of the entire application and so on. Okay. The second thing is about identifying the objects from the application. When we did a record, QTP has done a couple of things, team. Let me show you with a simple drawing. QTP has done a couple of things. Number one, it identified what we did and it identified where we performed that step. What is in terms of, did we click on a button? Did we click on a link? Did we select something from a drop-down list? Did we enter some information into a field and so on? Okay, that is the what part. The second is the where part. The where part is, where did we do that? Where did we click? Which link did we click? Which button? Which edit field did we enter value? Which drop-down list did we select some information from? Once we answer these two things, everything becomes easy. Okay. The where part, okay, this is the where that I was referring to, is all about the objects that QTP works with. Everything that QTP sees on the application, it considers that to be an object. Okay, very simple instructions. For example, if your cell phone is an object, right? So with your cell phone, you can dial a number of one of your contacts. How will you do it? You will press the number. Where will you do it? On the keypad. So on your cell phone, you have a keypad, and on that keypad, you're going to press, let's say, 917222000. Okay, so you are going to the cell phone, you're going to the keypad on it, and you're pressing the number 9, then you're pressing the number 1, you're pressing the number 7, and so on. You're continuing to do that. That is a detailed instruction that we give so that anyone can do the same thing. The tool QTP itself is a dumb tool in the sense it doesn't think on itself. There's no artificial intelligence to it. But at the same time, it is so powerful that if you give the right instructions, it can keep performing the same things with a lot of efficiency, reusability, and accuracy. Okay. These cell phone, keypad, these numbers are those objects. That's the where part. In our application, that button, that edit field, and so on, which is present in that page in the browser, that's the object. Okay, we clicking on these buttons is the what part. What did we do on that? Okay, for each activity that we perform, one line of code also gets generated. It will learn what we did, it will learn where we performed, and put that as part of one step in your script. And that's where your vbscript gets built up. And this is where you will see the code getting generated. Instead of doing a record and run, we will actually perform the same thing by writing our own code. And that's what this talks about. So the second step is about identifying the objects from the application. What are the objects that we want from the application that we want to work with? So let's take that website once again. So team, so far we've just been going very gradually, but any questions that are related must be related with what we are doing today. It not be something about the training or the course content and all that. Anything that's happening so far that we've done in the project today, because that's what we can keep things relevant in that case. Now, what are the different objects that we have evaluated? One set of objects are all these fields out here, correct? Then we have the second set of objects that will come up out here. Let's first start small. These sets of objects. This is what we need to work on. So we have to identify those objects. These are the objects. The second step that we have identified, now that we know that these are the objects that we will work with, we will have to add them to the object repository and assign logical names. So what is this object repository and assigning the logical names? As I was explaining, when we talk about what to do and where to do those steps, the where part, for example, your cell phone, the keypad, the identification of those things is stored in a place called as object repository. All right. Why is it stored here? So that when we ask QTP to repeat and perform the same steps again, it can go there and see which object, get the identification for it, and perform that. It's very simple. It's like this. If I say that, I want you to deliver a email address, right? So I have to give you from which email address to which email address, what is the subject, what is the attachment, what is the content of that email. Once I give you this information, you're able to go and put it in. You take that email address that you've sent to and you store it as part of your contacts. So in future, you don't have to type it again. You just start to enter the name, it will automatically come up, right? What did your Outlook or your Gmail or your email account did? It has stored that information somewhere for a future use. That is what object repository does. Objects stored in a central place. Okay. When we do that, we also give them logical names so that we can identify. So when you send an email, and when you add it to your contacts, you not only add the email, you can also put a first name, last name, if you want the address, phone number, and other contact details. So that way you're building it for your future use. You're maintaining things well, correct? That is all about organizing your testing, which is very important. A lot of people just come in, start to record simple things and put it, save it as different tests and go on. That is not the purpose. You have to be very structured in the way we do it. And where is this object repository present? It is out here. When we do a record, the objects get recorded out here and the script gets generated as to what to be done on it. The where part goes in here and the what part comes here. Now, instead of doing the record, the other alternate is I can ask QTP that QTP, hey, can you learn about this object and store it in your repository? How will we do that? A very simple feature once you open the object repository. How did we open the object repository? You see the stack icons with different colors. This is the place where your core objects are stored. Okay. When we get to descriptive programming, that is when we get into keyword driven framework, that's when we'll do the descriptive programming. We will bypass the use of object repository at that time. Then it will become very, very not tricky, but very interesting. That is because a lot of this application these days, you need to master descriptive programming to be able to identify them. So how do we add the objects? There is a simple icon here called add objects to the local object repository. Do you see this? The cube, which is signifying an object, and the plus sign, which is saying add the objects. Click on that and select the object that you want. Now, your mouse pointer changes from a simple arrow to a hand, like you get when you go over a link and so on. So once I click on this object, QTP will tell that here's the hierarchy of that object. What is a hierarchy? There is something called as a browser object. This whole application is called as a browser. Okay. In that there is a web page. This whole thing out here inside this browser is your web page. Inside the web page, there is a web table and another web table in it, and inside that there is a web edit. So what are these? These are the types of the object. Browser is a type of the object. So we're talking about cell phone is a type of an object. The keypad is a type of an object inside the cell phone, right? Like your car. So you can say that car is an object. There is an engine in the car. There is a fuel that's going into the fuel tank. There is a power to it. So the way they are arranged is to identify the type of object and what name we give to it. What about this web tables and all of these things? It is basically how QTP identifies by looking at the source code for this application. What is the source code? If we do a right click and say view source, you will see the HTML code that has been used to come up with this output that you see, which is your user interface. So QTP is actually going into this code to see how these objects are structured, where they are, and so on, and to be able to get some information back. All right. You will be able to understand some of those things as we get into, but let's understand the core foundation to it now. Once I click on OK, see what happens here. It has added something called as the salary calculator. It has added something called as the salary calculator again, and something called as salary. What are these? These are the different types of objects. How do I know what type of an object it is? You click on that object, you will see something called as a class. Class is the type of object. For example, if I'm talking about a two-wheeler, a bike that you're trying to ride, okay, then you're trying to talk about a motorbike, then you're trying to talk about a car or an aeroplane or whatever. These are different types of objects. They belong to different classes because they do different things, right? Inside this browser we have a page, and this icon out here is referring to a class page. These are called as child objects. This is the parent, this is the child. Why is it so? Because it is contained in the other. Okay, if I talk about my dashboard in the car, where is it? It is inside the car. So the dashboard is a child of the main car object. All right. Each of these icons, depending on the type, each of these objects, depending on the type, the icons will vary. Okay, and each icon will signify the type of that object. Web edit is signifying any field where you can enter information in your website. That becomes your web edit. Now, what are these names? These are called as logical names that QTP automatically generates based on what it sees in that HTML code. All right. So those are the main information team, the class of that object and the name, this name and the class. Okay. Then comes, but how does QTP know that this is referring to this object? For that, it will take as something called as description properties. These are the properties that are used to identify that. For example, your social security number or your email address that is linked with you, or your vehicle identification number for your car or your license plate number. Those are unique to that specific object of that class. Am I making sense, Steve? Just taking a quick pause to make sure that you're getting the core concept. And the good part about this team is, depending on where you've started, if you've already seen some of the demo videos or you've gone through most of the videos or training and so on, this may look a kind of a breeze for you. But for someone who's really looking at it for the first time, it may be challenging. Then how do you overcome it? Review this once again. Repeat this video, and that is the advantage of this video sessions team. You can pause, repeat, play, do whatever you want, but at the same time practice on it. All right. So let's see if there's anything that I should pick up to put for everyone. Okay. So coding the scripts will be done only if when application is ready. How can we code it? Okay. Again, Nusrat, this is a question for a later time. The question from Nusrat is that how do we start to write code for an application if we don't see all of this out here? Okay, that is when we get into the descriptive programming, where we know how to identify it. The keyword driven framework that we develop is one of the most powerful ones that you'll find in the industry. It is a script free keyword driven framework that can be easily customized and implemented on any application. Even if the application is not yet built, just looking at the technical designs using which the development team is working, we can start to create our automation framework. All right. Is web edit and web element the same? No, we haven't come to web element yet. All we have seen right now is web edit. When we get to some of the texts that we see here, you will see web element. Now, as there are two types of learning team, very simple. I can say that, okay, what are the different types of classes that are there in an application? You have a browser, you have a page, you have a link, you have a button, you have a drop down. That is one way of systematically trying to very theoretically go on things. The other way which I try and imply is that let's go about exploring. As we explore, everything that we will come across, we will slowly master. Because it makes more sense when we're using it, it should go into that, into you very easily. All right. All right. So let's continue. We'll come back to a few of your questions a little later. Now, the description properties, we will come to it at length. This is a very important section. Okay, this is what will differentiate your skill. How do we identify these objects? All right, this is something we will go at length when we come to keyword-driven framework. In fact, even as part of this framework, towards day 4 or so, we will get into the details of how QTP is working with each of these description properties and the values to it. The most important thing that typically people don't do is changing the names of these objects. These are logical names QTP has given it based on some information, depending on the title that it saw, depending on what it saw for some of the features for this field and so on. Okay, you have to change it. Why should you change it? Because you will maintain your scripts. When you write your scripts, it should become very easy for us. Okay, so this is a browser. So I'll just say this is IE browser. Okay, that is the browser type we're using. So change the name here. That way you are able to easily identify what it is. The salary calculator is good enough for a page. For a page, we're saying that that is the name of that web page. The web edit field salary makes also sense because that is the salary field that we're talking about. Now let's continue to add more fields and then see how it behaves. So add one more field and we click on status. Okay, now do you see again the same browser page, web table, web list? And when I click on OK, let's see what happens. Web list is a new type of object that we have come across now. What is it? It is an object that you see in application which is a drop down list where you can click and select something from one item from the many given options. That is a web list. Alright, that is a new class of an object which is there in your web page. Now I say OK. Typically you should see again a browser page and so on getting generated here, but let's see what happens. What it did is QTP has recognized that we continue to be on the same browser. We were still on the same page. All we did is we pointed to a different object. Correct? So it felt that it makes sense for it to add it under the same hierarchy. IE is still the same browser. We just change the name. The page is the same. That this is one field in the page. This is the other field in the page. All right. Should I change the name? Status, does it make sense? Yes, it is good. So we'll keep it that way. Now let's continue to add a few more. Number of dependents. Again in similar fashion, this is a web list too. Now, team, if I click on other monthly deductions, what is the type of the object that will come up now? Anyone? If I now say add objects and click on this, what will be the type of the object? Web edit, correct? Why? Because it is an edit field. And do you see these icons varying? Depending on the type of object, the class of object that you see here, the icons also vary for them. Alright, so what have we added? We have added salary, we added voluntary. What is this voluntary? Voluntary deductions is how much you want to get your paycheck getting deducted from your paycheck, right? Is this easy enough for us to understand? If not, let's go and change it. Give something which is more logical for us because we are the ones who will use it. Correct? QTP is giving us a base. We have to go and change it. Now let's add this. What is this? This is a button where we click on. What do you see it out here as? Web button. Alright, team. Most of the elements that you see are now getting identified based on how we put information into the application and how we take it into the object repository. Now what we have done is we have progressed on this third step where we have added some of these objects to the repository. So team, that is what we have done so far. Any questions please before we go about writing our first vbscript code? Let's see. So coding the scripts will be done only if an application is ready. How can we? So okay, so I've answered that. If the field has been changed to some other place or name is changed, correct. So what happens if this field from here is moved somewhere else? Okay, if it is not here, if it is there somewhere. It all depends on how you've identified this object. If I've identified this object using something which is a unique identification. There are two ways I can tell you that, hey, my car is in the parking lot. Can you go and get some the bottle of water that I left in there, right? So how can I tell you to go and get it if you don't know what my car is? I can give you my vehicle identification number. I can give you the license plate number, the color and make of it, correct? Then you can go and get it. Or alternately, I can tell you that it is parked at the end of the street or the third car from the left side. That is the other way. I can say relative to other cars, or I can say specifically irrespective of where this car is, using something to identify. So when we get to descriptive programming, you have both the ways to identify the objects using something called as ordinal identifier, which says where is it relative to other objects, or using pure descriptive programming where we use based on certain properties of it. Videos of the session, yes. So I'm recording this. I will host it once it's done, and then you'll have access to it. Why web table class is not inserted? Yes. So why didn't it insert web table when we saw there was a browser page, web table go? So what QTP felt is that there is no need for us to identify so many levels of hierarchy. For example, I'm saying that do I have to tell you that, hey, can you go and look at the meter reading in my car? Should I say that in my car, near the front seat, on the dashboard, can you look into behind the steering and see what is the meter reading, the odometer reading, or the fuel gauge? Or can I just say, hey, go to my car and look at the fuel gauge and come? You're smart enough to identify that, right? So that's what QTP has done. QTP is smart enough to identify that we will identify this specific web button called Go in the page. It doesn't have to be necessarily in that web tables and so on. That is why it omits it. Our purpose is for that. How it has seen it as part of the code, it doesn't need it. All right. All right, Tim, let's see if there are any other questions. Can we explain the difference between web edit and web table? Okay. So very simple difference between web edit and web table. It's an edit field where you can go and type in information. That's a web edit. Do you see this neatly organized one besides the other? This and this are in the same line. These are all on the same line. These are part of something called as your HTML tables. That's how the code looks. They're a part of, this is a row and this is a column in your HTML table. Okay. So this whole matrix of things that you see in a row and column specific information, that is called as a HTML table. And when QTP sees that these objects are part of a HTML table, it says that there is a web table, which is the HTML table, inside which are the fields. What is the benefit of changing the object names in the object repository? So I've showed you the good practice that we need to do. But why are we following this practice? As we go about coding, it becomes easy for you to identify it. Then you will know exactly why. Okay. All right, so let's move forward now. I want to at least get to writing a few sets of code. Now we have done this portion. Now what's the next step? Going back to the application, the Excel where we have the plan. Write the basic code for the test scenario. So why should I write the code? It's very simple. Let's say you bring in a new pet. You bring in a dog and you're trying to groom them. Can the dog understand your language? Can you understand the way it is reacting? Then how do you communicate? You have to develop a way to communicate with it over a period of time, right? So there is a different language, a different communication that you do, different signs that you give. Depending on that, you can communicate with your pet. And the pet also understands how to ask for what, if it's depending on its state of need. You go to a foreign country, you need to talk to someone who doesn't understand our language. What do we need to do? Or you don't understand. You need a translator in between. You need someone who can understand English so that that person can understand what you're saying, translate it to the back to the person who's in the foreign language, correct? In a similar way, QTP does not understand pure English. If I say that, hey, go to the web page and enter the information, okay, this is English for it. Okay, it cannot understand that as an instruction to do something. So for us to give instructions for QTP to perform, QTP do A, B, C, D, E, it has to be given in a format that it understands, and that's VB scripting. All right. So what we give as an instruction to QTP, okay, has to go through a middle layer, and that's called your VB scripting. Okay. QTP understands VB scripting. Okay, it doesn't understand pure English. All right. So if we need to communicate with QTP, either we learn this language or we get a translator. But you and I will get paid because we know this. We are the translators in between. We know exactly how to communicate between both of these, right? And that's why we will have to learn VB scripting, rather master this. There's no second thought to it. Okay, it is one of the most simple things to learn. So I will try and keep it in that way too. Now, how do we go about learning VB scripting? Very simple. We'll go in a very practical approach. I have to write the basic code for the test scenario. What is it? First, let me write in English, pure English. Okay, enter the salary, correct? Then enter the what was that? Status, marital status, correct? Enter the dependents, then deductions, okay? Then capture, okay, click go button, okay? Then capture the results, compare the results, report the findings. So what did I do? I have noted the steps that we will have to perform. What are these? Pure English. Why are we writing this information? This is for us to keep track of what we are supposed to do. Your documentation as part of learning automation tools or any job in the IT industry is very critical thing. So try and be as much documentative as needed. All right. Now, if I go and save this, what I'm giving an instruction to QTP is that, I hope it's not crashing now, because all that we did with the QTP so far will get lost if I do that. Okay, so now I will save this test. Whatever we have done, like your Word document, you start writing information, or your Excel, you got to save that. So I have created a folder called C:QTP. In that QTP, I've created a new folder called F22. Where is it? There you go. All right. This is representing the Feb 22nd batch that we started today. Okay. So we will double click in this, and I will put this as pay calculator, right? So I'll say PC1 and save this. Don't. Okay, there you go. At least it tried to save. Now what we have done is we have tried to save, but when we did that, QTP is giving us some information back. This is basically saying that, hey, you've written some things, I cannot understand what you're saying. Can you be more explicit? Why is it giving this information? Expected end of statement, and it's telling us where, which item, which line, and so on. So for every line that we wrote, it is giving this information. That is because this is not VB scripting. What are these? Our notes. So these are like our comments against what we want to do. So for now we have to give an instruction to QTP that QTP treat them as comments, and the way we'll do it is doing Control M. When I do Control M or click this icon here, what we are doing is we are converting this text into comments. QTP will ignore this, anything that is starting with this apostrophe. The reason is it treats everything that starts with an apostrophe, whatever comes after it, as a pure English, that is our comments, and it will not treat it as a VB script. Now if I save it, it will be able to store those exactly. Okay, so the information that you get here is critical because it will tell you if there is an error in what we're writing. Is it performing correctly or not? Later thing. Now, how do I go about doing the other thing? The way to do it is very simple thing. How do we enter the salary? How do I give a VB script statement to say QTP to enter the salary? Let's try and think about it. First thing, where is the salary out here, correct? But where is the salary field in this page? Where is this page? In the browser. So what is the class of this browser? What is the name for it that we have, which is standard? BROWSCR. Okay. Now this is the class. That is the first word that we're giving. Team, anyone looking at it for the first time and we have not done record and run, this is how typically you'll face it. Repeat the day 1, day 2, day 3 a few times. It will become very easy for you because this is what you're supposed to do. Open the brackets. As soon as I open the brackets, QTP has automatically pulled up that name. What is this? This is the name that QTP saw in the object repository, that there was only one object of the type browser and the name for it was IE, and it has brought that automatically. This is one way to write your code, team. There is another way to write your code only for information, but which we will not use, okay, either in projects or anywhere else, because you have to write your code. Is you can right click here and say insert step. Okay, go to the step generator in this. What step generator does is a very simple UI that will help us to identify what to do, where to do. Okay, now if you click on select the test objects and you go and click on this icon here, it will open the object repository. In this, I can go and select that object. Where is the status object? Out here. Select this and click on OK. All right. Now what QTP has done is it has identified that specific object and it has identified what we will do. Where is that object in the application and what we're going to do on it. This is the information that it will take. And if I say OK, okay, the item, let me enter some value first, right now here. Status, right? Married. Married, and say OK. This is the line that typically you will see, the way QTP will identify. How is this line structured? The type or class of that object, and in brackets, the name of that object in quotes. Dot, what is the next object that we're trying to get to? Now we're trying to say in the browser there is a page, and the name of the page we put it out here. In that page there is an object of type. What is this object of type? Web list. What is the name of that? This portion here that we highlight, team, is the where part. Where is that object located? Once QTP looks at this line, what it does is from the code out here, it will come to the object out here. Once it identifies this object here, it takes those properties and then goes to the application using that information to identify that. That is how QTP identifies the where part. When we get to descriptive programming, we will give information in such a way out here that it will take that set of data and go directly into the application without going via the object repository. All right. This portion that you saw, which I've highlighted, team, is the where part. How do we recognize it? How do we master the format? Just by writing it a few times at your end. That's it. Now the what part. How do we identify the what part? So one, I showed you how to do it using the tool by right clicking and say insert step and all that. Now we're trying to do the same thing out here without using that. What is coming next after I've identified the first parent object? We have to click a dot. As soon as I click a dot, you will see different icons coming here, different types of icons. Anything that you see is a brick is basically saying that this is an object. I can do certain things in that object. For example, you can drive your car, correct? But in the car, you have the steering. You can turn the steering, right? Depending on the type of the object, what you can do on it changes, okay? There are different types of activities that you can perform on an object of type browser. You can go back, you can find the child objects, you can close and so on. How do you know what each of them does? You have to use them practically. As you continue to use, you can identify what each of them do. Do I know everything? Myself personally, no. But I know that if when I want to, I will be able to use it. How? Very simple. You have help and everything that is there for you to learn this thing. All right. So all this information that you see in the green icon with the motion sign are the methods that we perform. Okay. Then there are a stack of information that you see here, which is a child object. Do you see the stack of pages? Now that's a child object under this. What do I want to do? I still want to go to that web edit. So I have to select page, open brackets, and automatically the salary calculator comes. Why does it come up automatically? Because there's only one page, one object of type page in under the browser. Once we get this, again, depending on this object, different types of activities that we can perform. Okay. What we want is we want to get to this field, which is a web edit. So I can start to write, in fact, web edit. And as I start to write, it will get there. This is a child object in the page object. The way we have organized the object repository, exactly the same way we are trying to put it in the code. That is how QTP will be able to identify. Now, as soon as I open the brackets, I don't get it by default. I get a selection of two items. Why? Because there are two objects of type web edit under this hierarchy of objects. And what do I want to do in this? Salary. Now we have identified the where part. Next comes the what. But team, I've almost run out of time for the day one. It's 7:30. So I wanted to do a little more today, but we couldn't really go because I'm going a little more slow. Each batch changes the way I present things, but eventually it is the same thing, team. Sometimes we complete this data-driven frameworks in 4 days. Sometimes it can take 6 days. It is just about making sure that we get the concepts. The core concepts are very important. So team, I will continue this tomorrow. Just to let you know, those of you who have not made decision about training, take your time. Don't be in a hurry. Attend tomorrow's session, think over it over the weekend and do it. Okay, but I want you to watch the video and attend tomorrow because there's a continuation for what we're doing. Once we progress a little bit more, you'll get a good idea of what this tool does, how we go about learning it, and so on. Meanwhile, team, any questions on what we have done today? The reason I ask you about what we've done today or so far is because it is relevant for everyone else. Any question that is important for you, but it's not relevant to what we're doing, please put it in the Google group that you'll have access to. What happens if we change the values of description properties? So if you change the values, it's basically saying that you go and change your license plate number in your car. How will someone else identify it? They cannot, right? So you have to be conscious about how you change, how you use. All of these things, we will come to it later. While recording, should we always maximize the browser to learn the objects? No, it is not necessary to maximize the browser. Sometimes you will see that if you minimize it too much or it is hidden, you're not able to do it. But forget about recording. Even when you're adding objects, try and keep half pane of the application and half pane of the QTP just by cascading and resizing the windows. All right, let's see. If the two objects having the same name, then how it will identify. So if both objects have the same exact logical names, what it does is it will say salary, and for the second object, it will give a name called salary_2. Okay, it will go about giving it in that format. So it will, and salary_3, salary_4, and so on. If it has the same thing. What is the object repository setting adjustments to identify objects in the application? What is the object repository setting adjustments to identify objects? Okay, so there are lots of adjustments that have come, but most of them are default. So you can leave it as is. If you go to tools and object identification, depending on the type of object, is it a Windows application or a web-based application? Because that's what I have licensed to right now in the trial. You can say, how does a browser get recognized? How will a link get recognized? What properties? So leave it as is for now. You don't need. Even if we need to do something, all of this thing, we don't need this tool. We will do it at a script level using descriptive programming. You don't need to change those settings out here. Okay. Yeah, Madhu, advice taken. I tried to save it at least the first time. Now let's see if I can save it now. There you go. Saved. I get scared about crashes too, so try and save it as regularly as you can. Run settings for web application. So yeah, so the run settings will come to, don't worry. When we execute this tomorrow, we will come to the run settings. When recording or learning the object, is it necessary to maximize the window? No, I've answered that. What happens if we change the values? Okay, answer that. Can we import manual test case in Excel sheet into QTP? Can we import manual test cases in Excel sheet into QTP? From Excel into QTP is the question, right? Yes, that is what we will do. As part of this, how do we go about reading the test data directly from the Excel and writing it? The intent is, if we put information in here, how do we take QTP to read information directly from here, get the outputs from the application, put it here, compare if it is correct or not, and put a pass or a fail. And that's how we will achieve the efficiency, reusability, and accuracy. How do we see the results after we run the script? So when we do the test run, you will see. But forget about QTP inbuilt results for now. We will come to the testing portion of it later. We first have to master the art of automation. Can I have the link to download QTP trial version? It is part of your welcome pack. The instructions for both QTP 10 and 11 will be sent to you as part of the welcome package to you. When we see the name of the object, will QTP still be able to identify the object as the name in the source code? Yeah, so tomorrow when we're going about, we will try and change some names here, play around, and see how things are behaving. So team, another minute or two, and then we will end, okay? How can I practice after installation of QTP? Just follow the instructions, which are very clear as part of the welcome pack that you will receive, and then go about doing it exactly the way we do it. QTP is not restricted to only work with Java web-based client apps. No, it doesn't matter what technology you've built it in, because end of the day, it will still come in HTML format. As long as QTP can recognize the objects, it's good. Which part of the test cases are good for automation? Okay, so this we will come to. How do you decide what test cases to automate, what not to, is all part of that simple clause called efficiency, reusability, accuracy. If you achieve all three of them, then you can automate it. If you do not, you do not. You should not automate. You should leave it for manual testing. How you go about when we get into keyword-driven framework, when we start to identify them, I will explain that to you. Do you provide any dummy project? Forget about dummy project. Take whatever I'm doing and practice on that. That is what you need. And in fact, you should take the information that we're doing, the way we're doing it, and put that information. If you take this team and say that as part of your resume, just at the end, not in the project, say that you've practiced, you've gone through an extended training. You don't have to mention from where. And say that you have gone through this. This is how, these are the steps you've evolved to develop such a framework. Put it in your resume, just see the effect that your resume will have then, and the confidence with which you can speak. This information, take it and put it as a project execution. Excel 2010 is compatible with QTP 10. I think, yeah, it is. There's no problem. How do we decide to go for QTP or Selenium? QTP or Selenium, that's a different question altogether, not related with what we're doing right now. All right, Tim, sorry about extending it. I know we took a little more than an hour, but just wanted to make sure that we covered everything that is important. We will meet tomorrow, same time, continue in the same process team. I will record this. I've recorded it. Now I've converted the video and share it with each of you so you can look at it. The video will not be available to you, team, before tomorrow sometime. But as soon as it is, I will let you know. All right, team, thank you so much for attending the day one. We'll see you back in day two. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye for now. Thanks, Steve.